Hi everyone, welcome to another Sims 3 speed build video. Oh, Kyle was getting ready to come on the camera, but now I think he's gonna jump away. But that's besides the point. Welcome! So today we're doing a Victorian speed build. Now, full disclosure, I haven't seen this build in quite a bit, so I'm gonna be discovering it along with you. But first, I just want to give some life updates and all that stuff because it's been a while since I've done like a sit down and talk with you video. For those of you who don't know, I moved across the country about 8 months ago or so now I'm living in Montreal and things have been going really well. I have a good job, I like my job, I've been doing streams on the channel, getting to know more of my viewers, and just kind of coming into my own. It's also been a long time since I've had my own apartment. I think the last time I lived by myself, I was 25 or 26, and I'm old, so that's almost 10 years ago. So now it's just Kyle and I'm just kind of doing my own thing. And of course, one of those things is building Victorian houses. And as a special treat, when I was moving, I was going through some old boxes and I found a little sheet of paper here that I was writing down in 2020. It's called Victorian House Brainstorm, and it was just a bunch of notes that I wrote down. I was Googling things that would help me build a more accurate Victorian house. Now, tragically, at that time, I was building in The Sims 4, but The Sims 4 is not the worst game for building a Victorian house. In fact, it can be quite a bit easier. But personally, I prefer using The Sims 3 because there's a lot of special roof pieces you can get from the store items. I really love the creative style where you're able to change the textures and everything. Because as I'm looking at the notes here, one of the things is that plastic wasn't invented until like the mid 1950s. Well, it was invented before that, but it didn't really become commercialized. And like back in the Victorian era, like you didn't have plastic siding, you didn't have plastic furniture. So I like being able to change the texture of the objects in addition to the colors. Because for those of you who know me, I'm very picky when it comes to color. And in fact, speaking of color, this house ends up being a little bit more of a fall vibe. I built it in Appaloosa Plains, which is actually my least favorite Sims 3 world if I think about it. I know it's a lot of people's favorite. I know a lot of you love pets, and like, of course, this is the world that came with the Pets expansion pack. And as much as I love pets in real life, I'm not really a big fan of them in The Sims because I find they just take up too much of your time no matter which game you're playing. And lately I've been too busy having 100 babies. So let's just start talking about the build a little bit. I've pretty much got the shell together. The shell, as I've said before, is my favorite part of the building process. I just like kind of get into my zone, start drawing some shapes, and just kind of like play around until something works out. I don't usually use reference images. I usually have an idea in my head, but I do believe for this house, I did use a reference picture. Oh, we can see I've gone to the supernatural windows, so I'm trying to go for that style. The supernatural expansion pack is actually an excellent pack when it comes to building a house in this style. Not just the windows and the doors, but it comes with some great furniture. And if you think about the world Moonlight Falls that it comes with, all that stuff works perfectly. And if I have a witch or a vampire or like a fairy that's been living for 300 years, then you'd think they would live in a little bit more of an old-fashioned house. Ew, I just saw the Drifter's Desire window on the back of the house. I certainly hope I don't keep that. The Drifter's Desire is one of those sets on the Sims 3 store where it's like I bought it thinking I would love to use it, but I can never find a place to use it properly. And it kind of reminds me of movie hangout stuff for the Sims 4, not just because they're both purple and ugly, but just because like they're fun items, and if you look at them by themselves, it's like, look at that window at the top, but like, you know what I mean? They look fun, they look funky, and it's like, I'd like to use that. But when you start trying to put it down, it just never works out. So as we finish figuring out the window situation, which we've been doing for the last 18 minutes, I'm just gonna go through some of the points on the list, and I'm just gonna see, did I actually use these? Because this is something I wrote so long ago, and it's not like I pull it out every time I'm doing a Victorian build. In fact, I forgot I even had this sheet of paper. The first thing I have written down is that there's a fireplace in every room, and I don't think I do that in The Sims 3. Because although there's a way to get rid of it, like it usually, they come with these giant chimneys, like those brick chimneys. You can't really do anything when creative style with them. They're just kind of in the way. Sometimes I'll wrap walls around them and then repaint the walls, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. Ooh, the second thing I have here is a brickwork porch, and I do believe I end up with a brick porch in this build. I also have a note about colored bricks. For those of you who don't know, red bricks are the most common, or at least they used to be, because they were the cheapest to make. Because when you would just dig the rocks out of the ground, make bricks out of them, a lot of times they would just come out as red. Of course, that also depends on the part of the world that you're in, but in the Victorian era, they would like mix things with different bricks so that way they can get these bright, funky colors. And there was a lot of painting done in the Victorian era as well, like painting the insides, the outsides of houses, but a lot of times that paint was toxic, so it was getting everybody sick. So let's not talk about that. Ooh, there's something about ornate gable trim. And in fact, this is one of the things that The Sims 4 does better. There's that crown molding and stuff that can go all around the house. I think the technical term is freezes, but especially in the Sims 4 vampires, they have some beautiful colors, beautiful textures, and that's not something I usually say about that game. There's a note here on geometric tiled hallways. Those are especially popular in more grand houses. Off-center front door, check, we have that. Narrow hallways, ooh, a Sims 3 build with narrow hallways. I don't know if that's gonna go very well. But looking at the size of this house, like I know it looks big, especially if you're used to the Sims 4, but this is not a big house in the Sims 3. In fact, I think this house only ends up being 2 bedrooms, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. As you may have noticed, I've been trying to do like these like bay window areas, and in fact, the Sims 3 comes with some great bay windows, but I didn't end up using too many of those. Maybe there's that one on the upstairs. Oh no, there's one on this side there. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. And these were very popular as like seating areas. They were popular in Gothic revival styles. They were popular in the Queen Anne styles. And even if you think about like those, like that row of painted ladies' houses, you know, the house where Full House was filmed, they have those bay windows. And in fact, in the show, sometimes they're sitting in the bay windows. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so jealous. But let's not get into the housing prices of San Francisco. I have a note here on dark furniture. I'm not sure what that meant. I usually color my stuff very brightly, but then again, that probably wasn't the most realistic thing. And on the topic of plastic, there was no synthetic fibers when it came to fabric. So all that stuff kind of came in the 1950s as well. So everything in the Victorian era would have been like natural fibers, cotton, wool, linen, you know, things of that nature. And again, if they had strongly colored dyes, they probably weren't the safest things in the world. And I have it underlined here, elaborate designs, which is probably why this is my favorite style of build. And while we're on that topic, let me know in the comments down below, what's your favorite style of house? I like building all sorts of houses in The Sims, but the Victorian era has a very special place in my heart. And I know the style of Victorian I do is very upper class and like not very realistic to the average person in that time frame, but I just love the big, I love the grand, I love the gaudy, I just love anything with a strong sense of style. Even if I don't particularly like the style, I would rather have something go too far and you have to pull it back a bit than to just have something not be inspiring. Remember, when it comes to Sims builds or YouTubers, the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. I'm gonna save the rest of the list for a little bit later, so I just want to keep talking about the actual build that's in front of us because this is a speed build video. So I'm using a lot of different windows. A lot of times I'll put different windows kind of all over the house, and then over time I'll just start kind of homogenizing it. Homogenizing, harmonizing, I'm not really sure which word I meant to say, but you can see what I mean. Like in the beginning, I had maybe 20 different kinds of windows, and now over half of them are from the Supernatural pack. In fact, probably 75%. But sometimes I think it's also realistic, especially if you're playing like a modern contemporary version of The Sims, that maybe this is an old house, but it's been renovated or changed up a little bit. Oh God, speaking of colored bricks, I just saw myself trying to use purple. But like I said, I do believe this house kind of turns into that fall, autumn, red, orange, yellow kind of vibe. And I like warm colors, don't get me wrong. I don't think they look good as clothing on me, but in a Sims build, it's okay. You know me, I like my bright teals, my bright fuchsias, you know, anything electric. And in fact, a lot of Victorian houses do use colors like that, especially when it comes to the outside. Like they would have like really brightly painted windowsills and like all sorts of crazy colors. And now it seems I'm struggling with siding. Oh no, this is always one of the trickiest things too, because you do want it to look good as a Sims build, but you also kind of want it to be realistic. And one of the things that I find really helps with that is keeping the bricks or the heavier stuff at the bottom and putting the siding and the lighter stuff like the wood on the top. But again, I don't think I necessarily did that, because sometimes you'll have like a whole building that is all brick, but typically as time goes on, you'll notice like when it comes to like mid-century modern houses and we move into more contemporary styles, all the heavy stuff is at the bottom and all the light stuff is at the top. Try it out. Make a 2-story square house in The Sims, make the bottom brick and the top siding, and you'll think, okay, that looks all right. But put brick at the top and siding on the bottom and it looks weird. At least I think it looks weird. Oh good, we've moved on to the balustrade finally, my goodness. Ooh, it's so chunky. I don't think I've ever used that one before. Is that from Supernatural as well? Goodness, if I use this much Supernatural, maybe I should have just put it in Moonlight Falls. But that's besides the point. We're getting into one of my favorite features of Create a Style, which is your ability to just kind of drag and drop color swatches wherever you want. Because once I figured out like the red and the yellow that I wanted to use for the bricks and for the siding, I can copy that down to the balustrade, I can copy it to the windows, and it just makes things look a lot more cohesive. And that's one of my pet peeves about building in The Sims 4, is that you're limited to the swatch options. Some are good, some are not so good, but even if you find some good ones, you're probably not going to find a bunch of stuff that matches it. it. And even if you wanted to complement it with a different color, then good luck finding the blue you're looking for. But I digress. I don't want this video to turn into an anti-Sims 4 video. I've got enough of those. And there will be many more to come, don't you worry. Okay, so looking at the floor plan, I can kind of tell that I've got a living room, a dining room, a kitchen in the back, and I think maybe a half bathroom downstairs. And in fact, I have a lot of notes on this sheet about plumbing and toilets and things like that. So when we get into the interior of the build, I'll have a lot more to add. But yes, as you can see, still recoloring the windows, still trying to change things up. And this is actually the problem with Create a Style, is that since you have so much freedom, I don't really know when to call it quits. I never know when enough is enough, so I keep going, then I take a step back and I'm like, oh God, it's ugly. Not as ugly as EA's builds, but still pretty bad. And sometimes an idea just like runs away with you. Like for example, in this house, I might get the random feeling to be like, I need a purple door. So I'll paint the door purple and then it'll ruin the rest of the house. And then I'm like, oh God, like now I have to change everything. And when you do match all of your windows, all of your siding, all of your balustrades, like I did earlier in this video, and then you decide to change something, you have to change everything. Like I have to recolor every fence, every window, every balustrade piece, every column, because now the yellows and beiges aren't really matching. And I'm still trying to figure out the color of the door. Like this is so embarrassing. And in fact, usually I cut a lot more of that footage out because I just want to be like, oh God, like I don't want to bore people with this. But then I'll get comments like, oh my God, like how do you build so easily? Like that was so quick, da 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 da. Like you have to realize that sometimes these videos, I'll start the build like 5 times and just kind of start over from scratch. And I won't show any of that because I'm like, oh God, I made an ugly shape. I did this wrong. Oh, I broke the game. You know, things typical Sims players do. But what I'm doing now, and in fact, I love doing this before I even get to the interior, is putting lights on the outside and turning the camera into like a night mode. Because I want the house to look good in the day and in the night. Sometimes I end up overdoing it. And this is also probably a good time to mention that this stuff would not exist in the Victorian era because electricity did not exist. Well, I mean, it existed, but we didn't know how to use it without killing ourselves. In fact, I think it was like the 1910s-ish when electricity started appearing inside households. Of course, at first it was only for the very rich. Imagine being like one of the first people to get electricity. Like, oh yeah, we have to build a giant pole from the power plant all the way to my house so that way I can have a light. Like today, it just seems so basic. Like if I moved into an apartment and there was no electricity, like I could sue. But of course, that's in 2024. Oh no, now I'm trying to figure out the trees. I was trying to do some sort of cherry blossom or flower tree. Now I'm trying the mansion ones. I've got a fall one in the front. See, the thing is that Appaloosa Plains has such a distinct style of tree that it's very difficult to use trees that are outside of that realm. But like I said, the challenge with this build was to kind of fit into the style of Appaloosa Plains, even though it's not my favorite. Oh no, I'm doing the little Simsy thing where I'm just gonna cover the outside in bushes. But you know what? It usually ends up making a house look better. But this is one of the things that you can easily overdo. I know I've definitely overdone it. There have been some mansion builds where like everything's looking good, I enjoy the shell, and then I fill the whole thing with plants. And we're not talking about the corner of a bedroom that you don't know what to do with. I'm talking tiles and tiles of square footage. I'm like, you know what? We don't need a garage. We just need 83 trees and 203 flower bushes. And you know what? Let's just do hedging around the whole fence just for fun. But nowadays I'm a little bit more toned down. In fact, if I want to do hedges, I don't typically do it at the sides and the back of the house. I just do it at the front, because at least in a lot of the houses that I see in real life, they don't have like hedging around the whole property, because first of all, you can't really get next to the property or else you're stepping on someone else's property, right? But they always have it in the front, so that way like your front yard can be private. And I think like, of course, in more suburban areas, like backyard privacy fences are more popular. And in fact, it's unlikely that you'll see a suburban build on this channel because they're just not a style that I vibe with. I've actually never really lived in the suburbs. I've always found the suburbs a very soul draining place, and I understand the aesthetic. I understand why people, especially in America, would like that, but for me it's gross and I just feel like I would just lie down and die. But great if you like it. Oh God, here we go with the terrain painting. This is often something I do at the end of the build. I'll kind of use it as like a cue, so that way when I'm doing the speed build, like voiceover recording, then I know that the build is ending soon. But it seems that I've actually done this first, and sometimes I do like to complete the whole outside of a house before I do the inside. And this is just so I don't second guess myself and I don't keep going back and changing things. Like for me, like once the outside is done, it's done. Like don't touch it. And the inside, you'll just have to make sacrifices. But this is not something I recommend for the average simmer, especially if you're kind of new to building, because this can get very very frustrating. Like when you go to make your floor plan and you're like, there's no room for a bathroom. Like, too bad, you already landscaped the whole thing. And speaking of floor plan, we're finally moving to the interior of the build. My goodness, yes. And as I was remembering, this build is not the largest. I'm sure I'll clickbait it as a Victorian mansion in the video, but when it comes to like the reality, this is like a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom house with maybe a fainting room. And if you don't know what a fainting room is, don't worry, we're gonna get to that a little bit later. Ooh, and we're also doing lighting, which is also something I like to take my time with. I really do like using wall lights and floor lights and like a mixture of different lights to get different shadows and stuff in the build. I know some people like to use those big bright debug ceiling lights, which is fine when I do something a little bit more modern, but when it comes to a house like this, it's all about the shadows. And The Sims 3 is not the brightest game, and in fact, The Sims 4 doesn't have the brightest players. Sorry, I promise I'll stop. But as I was saying, if you lean into the dark and shadowy aesthetic, it usually ends up working perfectly in this game. Other Sims games, not so much, so that's another reason why I like building in The Sims 3. Okay, so I see some basins, so why don't we start talking about what things were actually like? So when it comes to like basins and things like that, a lot of times people would just have like a bowl of water and a cloth in their bedroom, or in their chamber, I should say, because you would never call them a bedroom back then. And in fact, bathtubs were often portable, so that way you could drag them in front of the fire so you could heat up the water. People used to get horrible burns from like the heated bathtubs. So of course in The Sims, we'll have to use our little bit of an imagination. So I usually like just making like 1 or 2 nice fancy bathrooms. And unfortunately, The Sims 3 store has a lot of the good bathroom stuff. Like I like to do like platform tubs and like standalone things, but a lot of the really old-fashioned stuff only comes from the store. There is specifically a set called the Edwardian set, and they have some beautiful kitchen and bathroom items, and I think that they add that functional detail to The Sims 3 while still adding that like old-fashioned realistic touch. This is also a good time to mention that a lot of the lighting was gonna be candlelight, like even like the wall lights and the ceiling lights, they would just have candles in them, or gas lamps. And this was actually a big cause of dirt because you would just be burning coal and gas and wax like all day, every day in your house. Oh goodness, now we're moving on to the kitchen, and I noticed that there's a table in the kitchen, and this is for a very specific purpose because counters were not the most popular thing, especially in the earlier Victorian era. And a lot of times you would have kind of like counters on the outside and a central workspace in the center, and that was often a table. And a lot of times you would just pull up a chair to the table because you'd be in the kitchen all day. Whether you were a wife, mother, or servant, you were probably cooking a lot of food from scratch for a lot of people. So I always found that really interesting. So I always stick like a dining table inside my Victorian kitchens, even if it's not going to be used for dining. But of course, we'll get to the separate dining room later. Oh God, I've got some notes on furniture here too. And since we started furnishing the living room, why don't I get started with that? Ooh, I mentioned a wood burning stove, and it looks like I stayed true to that in the back in the kitchen there. I also have a note here that changeover was really high, especially in wealthy households, because new things were getting designed and invented constantly. Like we're talking like post-industrial revolution, all sorts of science discoveries, some better than others, and all sorts of like different things coming to fruition. Even just when I was mentioning about plastic earlier, like imagine how the invention of plastic changed furniture forever. But since they didn't have that back then, they used to use a variety of different woods. You'll notice that a lot of the woods in this build are slightly different because it's good to have some oak, it's good to have some pine, it's good to have some cherry, because you wouldn't have all the wood be the same. You might have all the wood be the same in a single room, but as you moved room to room, it might change. In fact, you could have like cherry oak for your floors, your wall paneling, your furniture, all in your lounge. And then if you go to the dining room, you might have a light cedar or a pine or something with a little bit of a different style. This tied together really well with the fireplace in every room. And we're probably going to see a fireplace a little bit later. We're probably not going to see one in every room, but if you think about it, the fireplace is also kind of like the television of back then. You would face all your furniture at it, like it would be like your source of life. And a lot of times the fireplaces were decorated very distinctly. So you could have like a different stone or a different tile just to accentuate the room a little bit. Okay, now we're starting to see some of my time savers. I'm trying to get some placeholder furniture down, but I'm also copying furniture that I've previously used in a different room and just putting it in other places. You can always change it later, but the reality is that if you're able to buy like one end table of something, you might have been able to get 5. So why not have 2 in the bedroom, 1 in the living room, 1 in the dining room? I don't know, I thought it made sense. And you can also see I have 1 strip of tile for the walls. So I've got that pink strip there, the blue strip there. So that way I can kind of play around and decide what color walls I want. But I don't like coloring the walls until the end. This is something that I learned relatively relatively recently. And when I say that, I mean in the last couple of years. But I find it's easier to tie a room together, to furnish it, and then add your wallpaper and flooring. Don't do the floor and the wallpaper, then try to furnish it. Even though that's more realistic in real life, it can become a lot trickier. So sometimes like I just kind of harmonize the furniture a little bit. I imagine they were all bought from the same set. I copy some of the colors, I copy some of the styles, and then I just go crazy with the wallpaper. I might try a bright purple, I might try a black, I might try a silver. And although some of those choices sound absolutely hideous, trust me, some of them are, you'll see. Once in a while, you get something breathtaking that you didn't expect. And I just find a moment like that wouldn't necessarily happen if you picked the color first. Like, let's say you picked a bright purple wall at the end and you really loved it. Imagine starting with the purple wall. Like, would you have picked the dining table you chose? Would you have picked that sofa? Would you have picked that counter? Probably not, right? But sometimes you need to see something to realize if it works or not. Oh God, I'm going crazy with the clutter and the decorations. This is also something popular with the Victorian times. The trend has died down in recent decades, but especially back then, like you wanted to show your wealth. Like you wanted people to come over to your house and you wanted to say, look what I can afford. So every painting, every sculpture, every wall art, every knickknack, everything possibly that you can imagine is just going to be all over the walls, all over the end tables, and all over the place in general. Oh, I'm trying to figure out rugs. This is usually pretty tricky as well. Oh, and I was mentioning how carpets would be near impossible to clean without a vacuum. Rugs are a little bit easier. Not that it would be easy because you'd have to drag the whole thing outside. You'd have to beat it with a stick, but it's certainly a lot easier than like a rug that you staple down onto your floor. Oh, bless. Look at me try to use these chairs. I don't think these chairs stay in the build. I can't really remember, but just looking at it, I'm like, oh, I hope to God I change these, especially for a chess table. Like a chess table is supposed to be nice. Okay, as we can see, I've added a bar in the dining room. I don't think there's quite enough room for a bar in the dining room, but I wanted this house to be really extravagant despite its smaller size. Because again, part of the style is filling up the space, and especially in a Sims game, if you make a room too big and you clutter it, it can really look weird. In fact, to all you hoarders out there, it looks weird in real life too. Ooh, here's a problematic note I have. Men and women were segregated by furniture. That is so true. Like, here's the man's chair, here's the lady's chair, and the lady's chair is never for you to be comfortable. It's for you to sit prim and proper and attractive and appear comfortable. And I even have here that men would sit on chairs that kind of looked like thrones, and women's chairs were always armless. It's so awful but fabulous all at the same time. Give me an armless chair. I want to be an armless chair girly. Ooh, and I wrote down here velvet curtains. So let's see if I actually remember to put curtains in this build, because that's often something that I forget about. Oh my God, there's a back to this. I didn't even realize this. I have a whole list of different rooms, and I think this is as good a time as any because the room that I'm coloring right here is actually the fainting room. So I have here the list of rooms and like kind of who's allowed in them. And the first room on the list is the front hall, which is unironically the thing that we're decorating now. It often contained the hats, the coats, the parasols. Oh, right, because like the ladies had parasols. You would decorate this area almost the most because it's a place where visitors would enter. Usually children would not be seen in this area of the house either because there's usually a back hall. Now this house is not big enough for a back hall, but it would kind of usually be right behind the hallway, and that's where children and servants and those kind of things would be found. Just think like Downton Abbey, like service? What's wrong with service? Horrible reference, but here we are in the parlor. So sometimes I call this room the lounge, sometimes I call it the parlor, and this is like the formal living room, and this would be the best room in the house. This would have your most expensive merchandise, this would have your most elaborate designs, your most expensive wood, and absolutely would have a fireplace. So here we have a fireplace, at least I remembered that. Let's see if I remember one in the dining room. Speaking of the dining room, I wrote here that it's a formal entertaining space and family meals. And in fact, in the dining room, you would always display your best china, your best linen, your best cutlery, and of course, your best stemware for the wine. My goodness. And back to the parlor here, I can just notice on the side there in my chest area, I actually kept those chairs, but I did recolor them, and on second thought, it seems to have worked out when I did the recolor, but like when they were in that blue shade, I was like, oh no. I don't like powder blue on the best of days, to be honest. Oh, and I've got a piano here because of course in the parlor, you would have like the entertainment. You might have someone playing the piano. Perhaps even you knew how to play the piano. Ooh, I did remember a fireplace in the dining room. So we've got at least 2 fireplaces so far. And it looks like I cheated away the chimneys. I don't really think I had a choice. But yes, as you can see, I'm kind of like doing a different wood for this fireplace, a different type of tile or stone or masonry, just because that would be more realistic, you know, along the lines of the things I was explaining earlier. Oh God, I'm trying to figure out the rug in this dining room and it is not going well. I was trying to use the random button a few times and it really wasn't working out. I know I've mentioned it probably 3 times in this video already, but like the concept of like a pop of purple just working, it's not working in the dining room. Oh no, I'm trying to do the table the same way. I usually do that when I get a little bit burnt out, when I'm kind of close to the end of the build and I'm like, you know what? I don't know what color this chair should be. I'll just kind of like click random swatches and randomize the colors until something finally works out. Or sometimes I show myself stuff that's so ugly that I'm forced to just kind of do it myself. Okay, it appears I was stressed with the fireplace, then I went to the dining table, then I went back to the fireplace, and we've settled on a very nice red dining room. In fact, it goes with the outside of the house. I can see the outside and the inside, at least for the first floor, being a little bit cohesive, which is not something I was expecting. Oh God, I was mentioning brick porch work earlier in the video, and I had it all in wood, but as you can see here, I'm picking out a couple bricks and I'm trying to decide which one I want. I try matching it to the wall first, because sometimes it would be realistic if you got like the same bricks for different parts of the house. Now, that's not always the case, but you know, at times, maybe there's only a few bricks available. And in fact, I don't think I copied it 100%, but I do prefer it as the porch. If I could only keep it for one, I would pick the porch. And I'm even kind of letting it into the kitchen here and even the bathroom, because we always think of tiles as like kitchen and bathroom things. Like I said, back then it was more for hallways. Oh, and for the fridge, I'm kind of using an ice box. I've got some notes on the ice box here, because again, without electricity, you had to have a way to keep your food fresh. People would deliver ice to your house. And it's funny because if you think of like over time, like I think of the 90s, like people delivering newspapers to your house. I think in the 50s, people delivering milk, but in the 1800s, I guess it was ice. Oh, and it was also coal, because that's how you kind of had energy for your house. You didn't have light switches with it, but at least it gave you heat. And oh God, I'm even decorating the bathroom. I put a painting in the bathroom, and we've moved right up to the fainting room. So I may as well explain what a fainting room is here. Now, there's a lot of conflicting information about this, so I'm just going to use the source that I found the most entertaining. Basically, back in the Victorian era, back in the days when there were chemists and like basically everybody was on all these different drugs because things just kept being discovered and weren't really properly tested. So women were wrapped up in corsets, doing drugs all day, and then they would feel not so good kind of halfway through the day. And you know what? They're about to pass out. So what do? You run up the stairs where no one can see you, and the first room to your left is a fainting room. It's got a lounging couch and you just pass out on it like a fabulous woman. I promise it's not as problematic as it sounds, but like it just like, to me, it's like a bygone era. Like imagine like, oh God, I have to go pass out, I'll be back. Like, oh, and you just like faint in your fainting room, surrounded by paintings, nobody in sight. I don't really know why I div it out there. And coming back to the lounge, it looks like I completely changed the color scheme to something else. And in fact, I probably should have kept it earlier. And it appears that I'm having that problem where when you change one thing in your Sims 3 build, then you have to change everything, and it just ends up becoming a creative style mess. And I believe I called this house a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom. I guess this is a 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom, because you have the study here, which counts as a bedroom. You have the fainting room, and you have like the master chamber. Oh God, look, I'm trying to use the Drifter's Desire guitar. I don't know. I think I might have built this soon after I purchased that set, because I haven't had that set for very long. And I'm being so desperate to use it. It's kind of embarrassing. Maybe I'll just cut this part out. Nah, I'm too lazy to do that. Okay, let's just keep talking about the build. I can do one better than that. We're almost at the end of the build. We haven't seen every single finalized detail, but I think we've seen enough of it where this is a good time to jump in. So why don't I boot up the game? We're gonna go into the house and we're gonna look at it in first person. See you there. So here we are in Appaloosa Plains at our Victorian Mansion. Okay, looking around, I really did not stick with the black and white windows. I ended up using a lot of beige on the outside. I tried to do a little bit of wallpaper on the roofing here, just to kind of simulate the freeze effect. And looking around, it's good. I don't think I overdid it with the landscaping. I only put a few bushes here, a few hedges there, and of course the ugly Appaloosa Plains tree. Oh God, I used 2 of them. And it's not even that it's ugly, it's that it always has that fall vibe. And when you have seasons seasons installed, you only want those trees to appear in the fall. Okay, coming around to the back, everything looks very basic, very put together. I really utilized the terrain paint flowers. I usually don't do that. It's not usually my favorite thing, but I do appreciate texture on the ground in the Sims games, because especially when you look at the Sims 4, it's just like this flat, uninspiring green. No texture, no detail at all. Kind of like the gameplay. Okay, let's go into first person and walk through the front door. And as we enter, we see the stairs that go up to the second floor. We have a little area here in case you wanted to put your shoes. We got a few places to sit, a few plants around, some wall lamps. And just to make it playable, we stuck a phone here. So why don't we go into the bathroom first? I'm scared. I don't remember what I did. Oh no. In fact, it's not too bad. I just used the Edwardian toilet. I used like a nice little sink, but I did choose to decorate the wall in the corner a little bit. Like I said, like this would be like the guest bathroom. So if your guests were entering it, you would want it decorated. And that's assuming there was a bathroom. Okay, so coming into the front lounge, this is a little bit loud. And I'm not sure if I painted the ceiling on purpose, but here we are. I left a lot of musical instruments in here. We've got a piano, we've got like a jazz bass. We got the fireplace area. I guess I decided on marble. And even though it's a bit of a strong color, this would probably be the brightest room in the house. And it probably wouldn't have the roof clipping through the ceiling either. Okay, let's go into the dining room. Ooh, in the cherry wood dining room. I'm glad I focused a little bit more on the red side. Oh God, I was even able to fit bar stools. I wonder if this house is even functional. I don't remember playtesting it. Oh, and we've even got the couple over the fireplace. Very nice. Okay, let's go through this door. I think it's the kitchen. Oh, it's not the kitchen. It's the hallway. The kitchen's through this door. So I left a little breakfast nook area here. We've got the ice box. We've got the wood burning stove. Oh, and I even tried to use the Edwardian shelf here. And what is this? The canning station. I think I got this very soon to when I built the house as well. So I was just eager to use it. What was I thinking with the tile? We've got like pink mushrooms, purple tomatoes, pink carrots. Thank God for the orange pumpkin, but like a blue eggplant. I don't know if you can change these, and I don't know what I was thinking. And to think, I've always been so critical of other people's use of color. Okay, let's go upstairs. Going upstairs, I can see that I put a ladder here up to the attic. Usually I leave the attics just for pretend, so we'll have to pop up there. But on our left, as I said before, this is the fainting room. So this is where you could run in and pass out on the couch. Oh, I'm sorry, the Chesterfield. We've got a privacy partition just in case you wanted to pull it in front of you. And in fact, I put the rocking chair here because I find that rocking chairs are something that Sims usually run to. Rocking chairs in The Sims 3 are just like computers in The Sims 4. Okay, let's go into this room. Oh, and of course it's the study. I cannot believe I have so much ceiling going on here. A lot of times I just don't bother doing the ceiling, or I forget about it. I certainly forgot about the curtains, but at least I have a ceiling going on. And of course, no computer. I just put like a wicker chair at the desk with another old-fashioned telephone, a few plants, another fireplace. I did pretty good for the fireplaces. I did not expect that. Like, I know it's a rule, it just usually doesn't work out in The Sims 3, but here we have like a little bit of an art area. Oh no, I left the Drifter's Desire loot, and I left it in a red color. Oh well, what can you do? I figured the easel going here was a good idea because you could look out at the scenery, you could see a horse galloping away, you know, instead of the side of your neighbor's house. And going in this door, we have kind of the master bathroom. So we have a little bit of a platform up here. We have a little bit of roof clipping in. Of course, sometimes that happens when you use diagonal walls, but as long as it doesn't block anything, you shouldn't see it in the game and it shouldn't affect anything. We got the Edwardian bathtub, we've got another plant, and this tile, like again, like this is not something that I would normally pick for a wall, but after decorating the whole bathroom and just adding in something different, it kind of works out. At least that's the way I'm justifying it. Okay, let's go into the master chamber. And we have another fireplace. I put a fireplace in the chamber as well. Oh, and I got the little water jug here too. Look at me going with the details. And speaking of details, looking at this straight on, it really just looks like a basic Simsy bedroom, which quite frankly is a good thing because sometimes in The Sims, you just need something that's a little bit familiar. Okay, I'm curious. Why don't we go up to the attic and see what happened up there? Oh, nice. I even have like a railing. I put a pool table. I put an extra bar. Now this area's got some roof clipping, but I didn't put anything there because I'm not sure if your Sims are even able to get around that. And it does look like I left it quite empty, which is usually something I do in most of my builds, not just because I'm lazy, and that's part of it, but the other reason is that if somebody downloads the house and they need to put in extra things, I tend to decorate my houses in a way where there's not a lot of leeway, like if you needed another skill building item or you needed something new. So I always like to leave space up here just in case you need to add an extra touch. Well, I guess that's it for our Victorian build. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. It's been so long since I did a speed build. I was really nervous about doing the filming, particularly the voiceover, but as I got started, it was kind of like riding a bike. I just stick to things that either interest me or I'm passionate about, and I just want to take the rest of you along for the ride because I find building these houses very therapeutic. In fact, the least stressful stressful thing about this whole process is building the house. I love opening up the game. I love taking a blank lot and just seeing what I can come up with. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give this video a like and don't forget to subscribe for some more Sims content. And thank you especially to my dedicated Simmers for your continued support. There's lots of things I want to do. I want to do some more builds. I want to do some updated tutorial videos. And to kind of end it all off, I want to do a new documentary. For those of you who didn't see it, last year I did a Sims 1 documentary and it's my favorite video that I've ever done. So I thought I want to do the same style for The Sims 2. So let me know what you think about that as well. But anyway, that's it for this one. I love each and every one of you so very much, and we'll see you all in the next one. Boom.